All right, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals here for a little bit. This is a team that in very short order has moved themselves to the ranks of the NFL's elite. Obviously going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, going back to the AFC Championship game this past season, came very close to winning that game. A few controversial calls potentially tilted the field against them. But no matter how you look at it, the Bengals are heading in the right direction. And they're just a couple key moves away from potentially going back to the Super Bowl and this time hopefully winning it. And there's a new report out that details one specific move the Bengals should make and they have a golden opportunity to make. But before I get into that, Bengals fans, Who Dey Nation, I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. Give us one player on the roster right now, one current Cincinnati Bengal that you think is kind of weighing this team down, that if the Bengals got rid of this player, they'd be better for it. A little addition by subtraction, if you will. Let us know who that player is that you think the Bengals absolutely need to get rid of in the comment section below. But all right, like I alluded to a minute ago, the Bengals are headed in the right direction. They're one of the better teams in the AFC, frankly, one of the better teams in the NFL. They've got all the pieces in place to win consistently, right? They're great at coach. Zach Taylor seems to be a great fit for Cincinnati. They're absolutely amazing at quarterback. Joe Burrow is an elite. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL already in a short time in the NFL. And the third part, the ownership group, the leadership of the organization, that seems to be heading in the right direction as well. The Brown family seems to be investing a lot more. They revamped the practice facility, more dollars coming in. They've already been very vocal about the fact they're willing to open up the checkbooks and pay guys like Joe Burrow whatever it takes. And they also have, of course, a nice thing to add is a matchup nightmare, big-time playmaker in Jamar Chase, one of the better matchup just nightmares for opposing defenses throughout all the NFL. So the Bengals are in strong position, and we've seen it the past few years. But the Bengals need to find a way to get over the hump. And then, sometimes what it takes is just one or two key playmakers at the right position. And according to ESPN Matt Bowman, there actually is a guy out there available that the Bengals should go after that will address their biggest need, and that's none other than former Indianapolis Colt Yannick Ngakoue. And this is a report from Bowen here over at ESPN. I'm going to read from the report here that I just pulled up. Ngakoue led the Colts with 9.5 sacks last season, and he has totaled 65 over 8 NFL seasons. There will be a market for Ngakoue, but finding the right team fit in a situation is tough, given that he'll be targeted as a sub-package player. The Bengals featured a defense that produced only 30 sacks in 2022, 29th in the NFL, and a short-term deal makes sense, allowing to slot Ngakoue as their nickel pass rusher. He shows good burst and ability to bend around offensive tackles. I think this is absolutely a perfect move for the Bengals to make. I think it's almost a no-brainer. Because one of the things people don't understand about the Bengals salary cap situation, there's all, people, you've seen it in the media sphere, right? Oh, the Bengals, how are they going to pay all these players? Obviously, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Higgins, what are they going to do for all these? That's almost sort of like next year's problem. Because right now, all these guys are still on cheap contracts. They have a lot of cap space, the Cincinnati Bengals do. So locking up key quality veteran players on short-term deals makes a lot of sense. Because obviously the big-time cap hits of a Joe Burrow that say gets locked up this offseason, then Jamar Chase the next offseason, they're going to structure those deals so that way it takes a couple years for the big dollars to coming in. That's how the Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills deal worked. That's how the Mahomes deal with the Chiefs works, right? They kind of started off slow and ramp up into it a little bit. So the big-time cap hits and the salary cap concerns, even though we've heard a lot about it this offseason for the Bengals, that really doesn't come into effect until 2024, maybe 2025 is when it's really going to start to matter. So they have like a 2-year window here that we can really take advantage of their salary cap situation. And a guy like Ngakoue, a situational stud pass rusher, can come in and address a huge need for the Bengals right away. And getting more pressure on the quarterback, getting more sacks is paramount. Obviously, in order to stop guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, if he stays with the Bengals, obviously he's brutal in that division. Kenny Pickett looks good. Deshaun Watson maybe get better in that division as well. You need guys who can get after the pass rusher. You need guys who can sack the quarterback. And like Bowen here from ESPN alluded to, the Bengals were not that great at it. But you know who the two best teams who weren't getting the best at sacking the quarterback? Philadelphia, number 1, Kansas City, number 2. They both played in the Super Bowl. That's not a coincidence. So getting a guy like Ngakoue could be one of those guys to push them over the edge, a guy who can get, a sack, a pass rush, and a key playoff moment. Because the Bengals, they're good enough at enough positions, especially positions that matter, where I'm not worried about them, making the playoffs or missing the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs next year, barring some crazy injuries or some fluke. The question is, do they have enough to overcome an Allen again? Do they have enough to overcome Mahomes again, right? They've done it before, but, do they, it's going to be tough. These guys are elite level quarterbacks. You don't want to leave it up to chance. You don't want to leave it up to Mahomes having a bad game or getting a few fluky calls as it was this past AFC Championship game. One way to avoid that is getting another elite pass rusher. And I think that is exactly the move here for the Cincinnati Bengals going after Ngakoue and giving him a 2-year kind of prove-it deal, maybe in a 1-year deal, seems to make the most sense. And look, we've seen this before. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs are a great example. They brought in veteran Frank Clark as an edge situational pass rusher. He's been fantastic for them, especially in the playoffs. One of the reasons a lot of people felt the Buffalo Bills disappointed in the postseason was because their supposed veteran pass rusher they brought on a short-term deal, relatively short-term deal, Von Miller, was hurt. right? So getting that extra additional situational savvy veteran pass rusher is crucial for playoff teams. And that's why I think the Bengals here have a golden opportunity to get a really quietly a stud one in Ngakoue. And that could just be exactly what the Bengals need to push them over the hump and finally win a Super Bowl.